Hello everybody, my name's Matt Whipp, I'm a partner at KPMG and I'm here at the TP Mines International 2018. I'm here standing with Lukasz Kubicki from Oerlikon and we're going to be talking a little bit about Action 13 and some of the progress around that part. So Lukasz, if we talk about some of the objectives of the action, one of them was really to make TP documentation mandatory, standardized, universal, whatever words you want to use, but have this consistency around the world. In your experience, do you think we're achieving that objective?
I think partly it has been achieved because multinationals, taxpayers do prepare and do recognize Action 13 as really a standard. Of course, there's still room to implement this to the national, domestic legislation, which is really governing and ruling the rules and principles. However, I would like to draw attention on one aspect, that the attempt to standardize TP documentation was made already in the past, at least within the European setting by EU Joint Transfer Pricing Forum. They made the initiative. But if you see what happened afterwards, the domestic legislators did not reflect much on that development. So only in some cases there was an add-on to local rules saying, okay, if you have a documentation prepared based on EU Joint Transfer Pricing Forum concept, it could be as well recognized, but they still preserved the local rules, which already is an indication that there was not so much perhaps desire to reach that standardization. If you look on Action 13 and master file, local file, I think what it led to perhaps is less standardization, but a tool to request more information. And so why I'm a bit skeptical about the standardization, you see still local countries that under the roof of implementing Action 13, they are implementing actions that completely deviate from Action 13. You have Australia with XML-based TP documentation. Yeah. You have Belgium with XML-based TP documentation. You have India where you have to file in the next week basically a master file, which as well requests much more information than Action 13. So if we talk about standardization, I think it is not seen yet, and rather I see certain threat that it will be a lot of local initiatives that would go beyond that.
Yeah, so almost what we've got is Action 13 has given us a base level. Countries have taken that and some have deviated and gone and done their own thing. I can see that. If you think about what they're trying to do in achieving that, of course, Action 13 is all around active risk assessment, trying to get the proper view of what's happening at this time. I mean, in terms of that, I don't know if you've seen any of it in practice yet, but your view on how these documents will be used for risk assessment, have you seen any action of that? Do you have a view on what you think or hope tax authorities will be doing?
Not yet if it comes to TP documentation, because basically we are starting with Action 13 templates and requirements. On CBCR, of course, it's not yet there. It will be only exchanged in the middle of this year. However, the risk element of CBCR perhaps requires more attention. There as well, there will be a need for certain standardization, how this data would be interpreted. As we know, CBCR is about one set of data, one file, then exchanged with a number of jurisdictions. And if this one set of data will be interpreted in a number of ways, of course it makes us taxpayers or creates a burden to us to explain the same set of data in a different way, which is of course not the purpose. We welcome definitely initiative of OECD suggesting guidance for tax administration, how this data should be interpreted and analyzed, which is I think a good development. But here again the question, how tax administrations would implement it internally. And we cannot forget that they have as well a burden of analyzing the data, creating infrastructure for the sea of data they are receiving. So I think they're struggling in the first place with this requirement and not yet perhaps developing a standardized, harmonized way how this data would be interpreted. So more from the risk assessment. So we hope only that on that field we would achieve and see standardization, harmonization, instead of again a lot of local initiatives.
At least some level of consistency in the approach to analysing the data, because it's out there rather than being asked to do 5 different reconciliations from different countries.
That's correct.
So that's the first bit, how they deal with the data themselves. Then of course we're going to have more and more data going in as you get local files submitted from one country to the other. And of course all countries seem to be signing up to the sharing of data to support the transparency debate. So views around that in terms of the sharing of data and how that's going to go between tax authorities?
And this is something that's definitely beyond us taxpayers. I think our mission finished by submission of CBCR. And we are looking carefully into this process. Already now we see that there are certain loopholes in the framework how this data will be exchanged. We cannot forget that the data is exchanged on a bilateral basis, which means there must be a will from both parties to exchange and do this on a reciprocal basis. And from all countries signing up to MCA, we see that not all may receive that data. And the question is, what would happen in case they don't receive CBCR through the existing exchange mechanism? So we see already local clear statements, for example in China, in Circular 42, where they clearly state, if we would not receive a CBCR, we would request this upon tax audit. So it means in that case, perhaps sooner or later, that data would be shared. But as well, there are other jurisdictions already threatening with potential local filing requirements, which means for us taxpayers is theoretically filing CBCR in 2 countries, which of course is against the whole concept of CBCR, where it was supposed to be filed in one jurisdiction and automatically exchanged. So I think there's a lot to be monitored, and again, we hope that the taxpayers would not have to file CBCR in 2 jurisdictions or more because of certain loopholes in the exchange framework, and that we don't have to face any penalties as we want to act in a best faith and comply with the existing rules that perhaps are not yet perfect.
Yeah. So we've had, effectively on Action 13, one of the first to go live, we've had a lot of activity. Seems to me what you're saying is what you're still to see is the practical outcome of that around how tax authorities will approach it. Will they do it consistently across risk, documentation and sharing, but a moving piece and one to keep an eye on.
That's correct, and definitely we want to ensure compliance, but as well to do this in an efficient way and cost-efficient way, and ensure that we manage this compliance in a standardized way, which is for our purpose, talking on the cost side, but as well for purpose of tax authorities, that they receive a one set of data with one clear explanation to it, to one set of questions that they would ask us. So at least that would be desired from our perspective.
To give you some of the certainty that was also one of the objectives
of course,
of Action 13.
That we are looking for.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for all that insight and your thoughts. Certainly going to be a lot to keep you busy, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.